Oh, yeah, there we go. All
Okay.
right. Thank you. We'll get through this.
Good evening. Welcome to the NAMI Eastside Evergreen Forum. We are lucky to have tonight our Executive Director, Barbie Collins Young, talk about a brand new program that we piloted with several middle school and high school students on coping skills. And so Barbie's going to talk about the experience of trying this new program and what the students learned from it. And we welcome you to tonight's program.
Thank you very much, Donna, and thanks for having me. So I'm going to move through my little slideshow. So we are NAMI Eastside. If you guys haven't heard about us, then you probably will or you should. So we are the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We support the whole East King County. We're an affiliate out of the national and Washington organizations. So I will tell you a little bit more at the end about that, but we want to do a little thank yous. So first of all, to our sponsor tonight for making all of these possible, to Evergreen Health, thank you. We are really focused on our youth mental health through these forums, and I'm so glad that we have everybody here to be able to share this. I've got one more supporter to thank, which is our Joan and Scott Legacy Fund. We are also very focused on suicide awareness and prevention. So thank you for your donation to making this happen. So I'm just gonna do my own intro, which Donna kind of did, but when you say I have a great passion for mental health, like my passion is like really, really big. So youth mental health is my hobby. Solving social problems, creating a new trajectory, that is everything that I live for. I'm a trainer for youth mental health first aid, the executive director for NAMI Eastside. I've got my life coach certifications, and also I'm a coping skills coach, degree psychology, sociology. But I'm very intertwined with our school districts, with the Lake Washington School Foundation, and a founding member of Balance in Mind, which supports parents. And we're going to talk about that at the end too, because parents need support. I put this anthrophobia in here because it was a recent thing that I realized. We're going to talk about this as well. If you guys don't know what anthrophobia is, you'll know by the time we end. But we're just going to talk about coping skills and how we came about doing this whole program and why. So I want to credit Susie Kroll because she tells this story a lot. Like our youth mental health crisis is like babies in baskets floating down a river, and we've got this collection coming in, and we're frantically trying to like pull them out and save them. And so we keep doing this, and we've got all these babies, and we're just trying our best to save them. But then we just have to stop and say, why don't we find out where are these babies going in? And why don't we find out why they're going in? And how do we prevent them from going in? Because we could prevent this youth mental health crisis. So that's just kind of the moral of our story tonight. So what we did and what I was schooled on, so I've been schooled in psychology, sociology, mental health first aid, but the best education I ever received is from our young people. If you let them, they will school you in what you need. So here's how we were doing it in the past and how I attempted to approach my youth ambassadors, like, let's do this. And they're like, no, that's not it. Like, okay, that's not it. So why don't we just ask them, what's happening? What are you experiencing? And then what do you need? What do you need to do to solve what you're going through? And then allow them to be part of the solution. So that's where this whole concept came about, is letting them be part of the solution and saying, this is what we need to fix it. So now we know, we've got all the inside information, and they've told us how to fix this. So we should probably do something about it. Now I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna say, during this presentation tonight, if you want to pop any questions into chat, if you want to unmute, if you want to raise your hand, Like, I love conversations. I could have made this a 5-hour presentation, but I've cut it down a lot because I'm very, very passionate about it. And I'm really excited about our results that we had with just our first pilot program. But knowing the concept of like why we did this, it wasn't necessarily what we thought would fix it. This is what our students told us. They're like, this is what we need. So I might alarm you with some statistics. It's not my purpose, but so if you get triggered, we're only going to talk about stats for just a little bit. At the end, there's going to be really good solutions in what parents and educators and community can do to get involved and make a difference. So please know that. And again, please join in, chat, ask questions. I welcome that. Everybody good? All right. Well, I'm going to give you some of the most recent national studies that I could find. Yeah, mental health distress is at an all-time high. Now, our studies say like we need policies to improve and protect mental health. Yeah, we need those, but I want to make sure we are barking up the right tree. And from my experience with working with our youth, they know way more than we do about what's happening and how to solve it. So I just want to keep that in mind. Yeah, we got a doubling of that depressive and anxiety symptoms during the pandemic. And we're talking about youth, but I'm just going to ask you to reflect on the adults you know. And I think it's kind of covering a lot of bases. So 25% are experiencing depressive symptoms. And keep in mind that these are the ones that are seeking help. And so they're going into the statistics. We have a lot that are not seeking help or they don't have access to help. So our stats are driven by who's going to a psychologist, who's going and getting the help from a doctor, because that's where we collect this information. If you thought about all the people you know, what number would that really be? Because it's pretty big, because a lot of people don't seek help. Eating disorders, and I think we'll be talking about this more in later forums, but when we have a 120% increase in hospitalizations for eating disorders, we should probably pay attention. And child suicides. Again, these are 2020 numbers. I feel like we should have a ticker on the screen, just like we had from COVID, about what's happening with our children with mental health. But these are from 2020, and there's just way too many. And children were the only group to show an increase. This is 2019 to 2020. Again, keep in mind, we're talking about hospitalizations and those who showed up. So suicide attempts, we know that girls in the US, for adolescent girls, that increased by 51%. If you have any questions about that, we can talk about that too, but these are just some national study numbers that have come out. A lot of them are still focused, or they're still presenting like 2018 numbers, but this is the most recent I could find. We did a survey for youth through NAMI Eastside because I needed to know like what is happening right now, what's happening with our community, what is happening here. So we did a very anonymous, like online Google form survey, completely anonymous. And when we go anonymous and they know like it's anonymous, we really hear what's happening. And this is where we found a lot of our information. So this is just a little infographic, but there's a lot of stress happening, a lot of stress in schools. So we asked them as part of the survey, like, what do we need to do differently? What can parents do differently? So I'm going to read you actually some of their responses. Give me a chance to speak what I'm feeling instead of instantly giving your opinion. And as a parent, I am totally guilty of doing this, so it's okay. The academic pressure, we are so focused on what we want them to be rather than who we want them to be, that the pressure is severe. They want us to take their symptoms seriously, and lecturing. when we have conversations, they come across as lecturing. And I'm just speaking for myself. So my son tells me, he's like, "You're lecturing." I'm like, okay. So learning all the way along here. So what can our schools do differently? So they are starting to give resources, lessons about mental health, but they don't change the things that are affecting our mental health. So this is, again, out of the mouths of our babes here. Overworking students, academic pressure, so many extracurricular activities, they're overwhelmed with everything. We got to take that back a notch. And they want to be anonymous so they can talk without fear. They have so much fear and they're scared. Like if I say something, they're scared at school. They also want later start times. That's something we should address. And as a society, what they want, how do we address these mental health challenges? Anybody tried to find a therapist this year? It's not easy, is it? So they want some more day therapies, group therapies. They're like, let's just get us all together and like do it in like a clump so we can relate to each other. There's so many different ways we can do this. And education and resources that actually work. Making mental health the #1 priority. If we could make mental health, if we could say like a good school is a happy school rather than the most academic achieving school, that would be huge. Again, out of the mouths of babes.
Barbie,
Yeah.
we have a question in the chat.
Yes.
Right. What did the youth say about overcoming the damage from social isolation? They were isolated for about 2 years.
Yeah, well, I think those were some questions that we're going to address a little bit later in the slide, but I think if we look at society as a whole about what social isolation did to us, we're all a collective group that have experienced a trauma. So you can look at this like a PTSD, not just for our youth, but for everyone. We're all in this together. So they feel like, yeah, we're all in this together, but they want some solutions, and our youth is the most solution based. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about that later, Donna, but the isolation part has created a one-dimensional society versus the 3D society that we had earlier. So if that makes sense to everybody.
It does. It looks like
Sorry, you had somebody say that the print is kind of tiny on the slide.
Well,
I'm gonna send these out.
yeah,
Oh,
I'm gonna
good.
send,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sending this out to everybody who registered. So, and if you want these, just email me at barbie@nami-eastside.org if you're listening to the recording, and I can get these to you as well, because I know they're hard to see, but there was so much information in this youth survey that we just tried to like compile it into a little infographic for you, but I will send this out so you will have it in your hands. Plus we have resources. We have a lot of things that we're going to send out afterwards. So keep that in mind. A couple other things. They feel that we're cramming fear down their throat. Like every time they turn around, the only thing they see is what they should be afraid of. No solutions to that, no coping skills around that. They're just like, we're just made afraid of everything all the time. So they're afraid of global warming, they're afraid of racism. I mean, there's things that have like caused this that we need to pay attention to, but the news doesn't have a lot of good news stories. It's really like what will make people afraid right now. And that's what all of our kids have 24/7 access to seeing what people are posting, to seeing news articles, and they have it 24/7 and they feel like it's being crammed with fear down their throats. But what they also want is they want affordable and accessible help. And also, like, as a parent, like if they come to you with a concern, like be really patient, listen. We're going to cover that at the end too, like what we can do, but it's not a joke. It's pretty real. And they want you to know, like, this is real. If I'm brave enough to come and say, like, something's off, then they want you to really be able to listen, and hopefully we'll give you a couple of those skills. Anyway, so how we came up with all these is back in October, we started our Youth Ambassador program. And honestly, I just really want to thank our board of directors for saying we need to do something about this. It's a little bit out of our lane for NAMI Eastside, but this was a need, and we're really into meeting the needs of the community and pivoting. And so I said, let's compile a group of youths and let's just figure it out. So we really have been throwing spaghetti on the wall since October, and I'm more than pleased with what has happened with this. So this is kind of where it all began, was getting a group of young people together who are able to share their opinions and to be empowered to say, like, yeah, you're the change, you can change the trajectory of your future. And they're doing it, they've embraced it. So we've definitely made some progress here. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the end too. But I asked them, I'm like, what's your solution to this? What do you need? What do you need? And above all, well, they do want education. They want to help their peers, because we know, like, peers are talking to each other. We're also quite pleased a lot talk to their parents or trusted adults. That was a really good piece of evidence. I'm like, okay, good. They are talking to their parents, but are our parents prepared to actually help them? But they want education. They want to know, like, signs and symptoms. How can they help? We're working on that part. The number one thing that came out is they wanted self-care strategies and coping skill education. So self-care is something that I think our society doesn't necessarily value, which we really need to really reframe our value around these. And they want to be empowered because they know what to do. They know what they need. They want us as adults to quit saying, here, how about this? We did this. And they're like, that's not it. And that was my biggest education, where I thought, like, I knew what our kids need. And I'd get in this group of youth ambassadors. I'm like, ta-da, we're going to do this. And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. And I was like, okay, well, tell me what you need. So this is where this all started from, is just asking them and giving them some empowerment and watching them go. And I got to tell you, our young people today, as much as we're concerned about them, we should also be so excited about them, because they are very intelligent and they know how to do this, and they just need the platform in order to launch themselves to do something about it. So I adore them. So this is also where our Cope to Thrive program came from. Now, honestly, I got trained to do this before the pandemic, because I also have been researching youth. I'm a researcher. I research everything. And I was like, here's what I feel is missing in our society that we've got away from. We've moved so much into academics, and now we're sending people off to college, especially this past senior class, the past two senior classes who've gone from pandemic, and they're boomeranging back. They're like, oh no, I can't do it. So why is always my question, like, why? And what do we need to do? And it's like, goes back to coping skills. So we found this program, and always looking for one that's evidence-based. And this one is evidence-based, and it's based on cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is like the number one treatment for anxiety and depression, and there's a reason for it. But the great thing I think about cognitive behavioral therapy is it applies to everyday life, to everyday moments. And when you can start to learn this and adopt this, anybody can learn it at any time in their life. So no matter how old you are, this will be a life changer. When I started studying this program, I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I have this when I was like 12? Unfortunately, you know, I was already many decades ahead of that, but I just think that It's amazing. And so it decreases stress, anxiety, and depression, but improving healthy lifestyle behaviors, because we look at things and it's like, it's what you do every day. How can you take a situation and reframe that every day to feel happier? And I know from the responses I've received from our students and the parents, it's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. My kids are more positive. I'm going to tell you what the kids said here. So this is just at the end of our class. They're applying them, which is really what we need them to do. And they have a lot of gratitude about it. They're communicating better and they're connecting better, and they need strategies. They also had fun, but it's a daily life thing. It's something we all need to apply daily and practice there. And I equate it to, if you want to get, a flat abs, you don't just do sit-ups once, you do it every single day. So this is a every single day and catching it. I know that even the adults who are present in my class, I've started to apply this and change their lives. So turning the negative into happy. And again, we all can acknowledge like our world is so focused on the negative, we don't see a lot of the happy. And so we have to do this within ourselves. So at least we have a group of 15 kids who can now actually do this. But the cognitive behavioral therapy triangle, if you are not familiar, it's that our thoughts are everything. And there's so many thoughts that go through our head. But when you change a thought from a negative one to a positive one, it can also change your feelings from a negative one to a positive one. And when you're feeling a certain way, you behave a different way. So if you're thinking a negative thought, you're feeling a negative feeling, you're probably going to behave in a negative way. If you're feeling positive, then you're going to behave in a more positive way. And so we worked a long time, like we really dove into the subject about reframing. So again, I can just talk about this forever, but you guys have any chats? Whoops, sorry. Reframing. And I'm going to give you an example of this actually happened after I had done this training with this course, and I was looking for opportunities when I was having negative feelings. So I'm driving down the road on the freeway. This is before pandemic also, by the way. And a big rock came up and it cracked my windshield. How do you feel when that happens? You do blaming, you're like, who did that? Why did that happen? Why did they sweep the road? So you start blaming. You just feel this rush of just negativity and you're angry and you're like, this is such an inconvenience. My windshield's broken. And I said, okay, this is a really good opportunity because I don't know how to really flop this thought to something positive, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I used gratitude and I said, okay, so I'm going to be grateful for my windshield, because if my windshield was not there, like if I was in the 1910s in my little jalopy, that rock would have flung up and hit me right directly in the forehead. But instead I have this beautiful windshield that saved me. And put yourself in those shoes. Do you feel like, wow, you're not angry anymore, you're not blaming anymore? How can you use gratitude to change a thought into what you're feeling? And then I behaved with gratitude that day. I felt like joyous. I'm like, oh yeah, I have a windshield. Yay, we have windshields. Who thought about that? So I credit this course with being able to do that. And I do it honestly all the time, every single day. And I'm like, it's an opportunity. This is just an opportunity. Let me see if I can reframe this thought. And I swear it works. I'm just going to share some highlights from our class with what our kids really resonated with. There was a lot more that was involved in it, but these were the ones that everybody got agreement on. We did a lot of activities around them. And this one actually isn't necessarily in the course. It came from Stephanie, who was one of our interns for our youth ambassadors. This was her project. And they're about automatic thoughts, and we all have them. So recognizing your automatic thoughts, are you maximizing something? And our example is like, oh, or minimizing, start minimizing. Yay, you won the Nobel Peace Prize. Oh, I got lucky, I guess. That's an example of minimizing. So, oh, yay, you got an A on the test. Well, everybody got an A. It was really easy. That's minimizing. Maximizing is exaggerating. And when we think of our kids and their brains and the way they're developing right now, like everything is under a magnifying glass. It's really easy to magnify and maximize things like it's the worst case scenario. Oh my gosh, they hate me. This is horrible. This is the worst thing that could happen. So we maximize and exaggerate important events and throw things out of proportion. Does anybody agree this probably happens a little bit? Yeah, I think we all tend to do that.
My life is over.
My life is over. This I can't go on. And labeling too, it's I'm a failure at everything. I can't do anything right. Any of the labeling that we do, we attach these labels to ourselves and to others. So, oh, I don't. So, and then black or white, it's just like good or bad. So we should just be friends. Oh, I'm going to be alone forever. Oh no. Anybody do that? So we do these very naturally. But the one that I thought was really fascinating was the mind reading. Because we took a poll of the kids just basically by holding up your hands, like which ones like do you do? And the mind reading was like everybody. There's no real evidence or hard facts. We can't read expressions. We can only guess like, okay, why didn't they say hi to me? Why didn't they text me back? I'm just going to guess they hate me, right? We do that a lot. So if you don't have the other social clues to kind of clue you in, like was she not paying attention? I couldn't see her face. She was wearing a mask. I don't know. I'm just going to assume they don't like me. So the mind reading, I think everybody said, including us as our adults, said, yes, we are mind readers and we are terrible at it because we're usually wrong. So we spent a lot of time there. And I just want to pause to say thank you to both Stephanie and to Melanie, who are our adult co-teachers at this class, that you got to experience this with me and also help present this to our kids. So thank you so much. Couldn't have done it without you. Any questions right now? I'll just take a pause. I should probably get my chat box going on.
Or we just unmute and ask questions if anybody has them.
That's a great idea. So if anybody has any questions or thoughts, if you're just like, oh my gosh, I've been mind reading. Mind reading is not for the faint of heart. So let's stop doing it. All right. No questions? All right, no unmuting. All right, we'll just keep moving through here because we got a lot. So we talked about these coping skills, and I want to talk about how we protect our kids, and we kind of need to reframe also how we're protecting our kids. Like we've been working so hard to keep them safe physically that we're forgetting what kind of damage is happening emotionally. So there's at some point we have to realize like we're gonna have to step into a different realm and say, you know, what's most important? Is it your mental health? Because that, you know, the thinking, feeling, behaving triangle, we really need to put that as a priority. So we did a lot of mindfulness techniques. One of the techniques we did was we passed out gumballs and we had everybody chew that gumball until it lost its flavor. And they just had to count how many times they chewed until that gumball lost the flavor. So we had some quiet times and we really got to experience that. But it's a way to give your mind a mental vacation. We talked about visualization going to a happy place. So when you're feeling bad, you could just retreat, and go into your happy place. I love sharing, like, my happy place is my swing set. I always know I feel happy on that. I can go there anytime. We own that, and that's always there for us. How we release emotional tension, doing this creative expression, the crying, laughing, reading, hobbies, exercise. We tried a lot of the laughing, and I'm going to tell you, our kids need to relearn how to really laugh again. It wasn't what I expected. I'm like, we're just going to have so much fun together and laugh and laugh. And I have lots of things to make us laugh. And they're so serious that we need to reteach laughter. We did some journaling. We gave everybody a journal to take home. But we also talked about, like, who are you talking to? You need a trusted adult. And if you're a parent, if you're an educator, the thing is, it doesn't have to be a parent or an educator. It can be an aunt, it can be a friend, it can be anybody who makes you feel safe enough that you can talk without judgment. That's your trusted adult. It could be the janitor at school, your bus driver. You just got to find one. It's protective. And then the feeling that you're not alone, it's spirituality, which is not religion, but it's trusting, like, in the process, like, every day we all woke up and that sun came up, and it's going to go down tonight, and it's going to do it tomorrow. Like, we trust that process. There's a lot of gratitude that we take for granted. So we talked a lot about being grateful for things that we just expect to happen. It's a process. You're not alone. Defining moments happen not in, like, the best moments, like this, they're great moments, but like when I got that award or things like that happen. They happen when bad things happen and you have to get through them. You got to cope through it. That's what defines us as individuals. And we have to remember, like, we got to have some hard times. It's a defining moment to get through the pandemic, and it's a defining moment to also cope right through it and get out the other side. And we're getting out the other side. But this connection piece, when we look at connection, oh my gosh, it is one of our life sources. Being connected through school, your friends, community, we got to get that back. So we're going to talk about that too. I thought we'd just do a little quick, my favorite mindful breathing exercise. Thank you, Donna. Kids love this one too, but just something you can do, whether you're sitting at work, you're in a meeting, if you're feeling tense. It's a mindful breathing exercise. So you just take your hand and you sit comfortably and you let people in, but you just focus only on your bodily sensations. And you inhale. If you guys want to do this right now, just feel how it works. Inhale and exhale. You take those deep breaths up as you trace up your thumb and then trace down. And inhale as you trace up and trace down. And you do the same thing up and down with all 5 fingers on each hand. You just feel your body with each breath and don't judge yourself. But it's a really great way to just incorporate, like, a breathing exercise into any type of anxious moment, panic moment, just to ground yourself. So it grounds you, you touch and you feel how it feels in your body, but you also focus on your breath. I love this one. We did a lot of breathing exercises, a lot of things they can tangibly take into their world and just do it at any time. And again, I'm flying through just some of the highlights of our course, but I really want to focus on what do we do and how can we make an impact. The positive self-talk exercise, this one actually was extremely challenging. So they had homework to write an affirmation, say it 10 times every day, like stick a sticky on their mirror, things. But as a society, when we do positive self-talk, it's like, oh, well, then I feel like, you feel kind of weird about it. But positive self-talk is the best way to start every day. And it's like, oh my gosh, look at me, I'm alive. look at me, I'm awesome. Yeah. So you high five yourself every day and you start with the good self-love moment, nothing can touch you. But it was a challenge. We actually had to write out affirmations for them, post them on the door, and have them select them off the door because they were not comfortable with it. But they took them home and it made a difference. It was like, what's an affirmation? It's like saying, you know what? I'm awesome. That's an affirmation, a positive thought. You can do anything. You've done it before. Let's do it. So we kept on them with this. We also added this to the curriculum, which was the comfort zone, because we realized comfort zone was our comfort zone was like, I don't know, this big. A regular comfort zone, like before pandemic, was, you know, about this big, and now we have these little tiny pinpoints. And Allison, I see you have a question. I saw you pop up. Please raise your hand. I mean, please speak.
Sorry, forgot to unmute myself. I have a few questions, but I know we're short on time. There's a couple questions. One, how many participated in the group?
Oh, that's a great question. We had 15 as our cap, and they were age 11 to 18, and we had them combined all together. So we had a sprinkling from 11 to 18.
Okay, and how did you find these kids?
First, I sent it out for kind of first dibs to our youth ambassador list, and then I posted it into the parenting group of our Lake Washington middle school and high school parents, and that sold out in about an hour.
Okay, so my second question is, all of these things that you're talking about, these coping mechanisms, these techniques that these kids could be learning, actually, Val and Vanessa and I were just talking about this today about the group for teens, how something could get started after school, something called empowerment, or something that would bring kids together that would teach them these coping mechanisms. But how do you, one of the challenges that we've heard over time is that kids don't want to join a support group. You know,
No,
like
that
you
was
want
my
to find
brilliant adult ideas. I'm like, let's do a support group. And they're like, no, no.
right. And, you know, I think about the whole community piece, and I think about the Breakfast Club movie where these kids were all forced together and they found common issues and challenges and struggles, and they kind of supported one another in a weird way. So it's like, how can we grab these kids and connect them together so they know they're not alone, so they know that they can learn coping mechanisms, that they can do mindfulness easily, that they can, have these affirmations that are easy to do. Anyway, I guess I'm wondering if anyone has thoughts on how we could bring this into the schools. And maybe this is too early to talk. I should have waited to the end, but I was too excited because I love what you did.
I'm super glad. And Allison's part of our Balance in Mind parent support group. But this is kind of our key elements that we asked the kids about, like, how do we do it? And like my initial thing, I'm like, we're gonna have a support group, and they booed that down. I'm like, what if we just call it an empowerment group? Oh yeah, they like that. They like the empowerment group. Like, yeah, I'm proud to be part of that. And we're same kind of thing. Same thing happens. We just retitle it, and that's what they want to be part of. But they're like, yeah, we want kids to be part of this and grow together. So this is, again, this is just a full spaghetti on the wall. Like, what sticks, what doesn't. We don't have it all figured out. I'm like, let's just do something and see what happens and see what they say. But my ears are 100% perked up to what they're telling us to do. And I've had to let go of what we have been doing. So I'm like, okay, I'm putting the steering wheel back in their hands, and they're going to tell us how to do it. We're not exactly there yet, but I think it's going to take. It's not just, NAMI side. I'm like, I just want to do something, it's balance of mind, it's schools, but I want us to all be on the same page with it. So we're not recreating wheels. We're not, it's like, this is not necessarily something like just we have figured, we don't have it figured out, but we know something worked. Donna.
How do they react to the term club?
I think club was kind of a benign thing. They just, you can call it like group, you can call it club, you can call it team. That part didn't mean as much as like putting the term empowering them in it. They were like, yeah, just empower us. But when we say we're going to empower you, like we have to empower. We can't be like, we're going to empower you and then tell you what to do. They already know what to do. We can't dumb that down. Like, and so that's where I'm like, I'm handing over to some of these incredible students that we had who are already out driving their own buses. Like, you guys are going to be part of the solution. And once again, this is so fresh. I don't know what they're driving yet, but that's what we need to figure out together. So does that answer that question okay? And
Thank you, Barbie. Yeah.
Oh, and Allison, I saw your comment, Empowerment University. That's,
Although the kids might not like that, but I could see parents going, yeah, you should check.
yeah, I graduated from Empowerment University. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, so one of the pieces we added in here, and I wanted to credit Sue Ellen Katz, who I worked with her on this a long time ago as well, was the comfort zone activity, which was the only time that we learn is when we exit our comfort zone. And our kids are really, really stuck in our comfort zones. As adults, like, yeah, our comfort zones, they're comfortable. Why would you want to get out? But you won't learn unless you get into that panic zone. If you don't take a risk, if you don't talk to somebody, like, you're not gonna, you gotta get yourself out of the blue. You can dangle in that red zone, but you gotta know how to cope with that. But if you can get into that learning zone, then we're on to something. So this came down to reframing like all these questions. What is it about makes you uncomfortable? Like really thinking about it. What are you afraid of? What makes you afraid of the outcome? What will avoiding this experience accomplish? What is the worst thing that can happen? Because I think most of us who have anxiety say we can think of like the worst thing that can happen. I know for myself, like just watching Jaws movies kept me out of the water for like 5 years. And I don't mean just any water, I mean like a bathtub. I was like out. That those fears are real unless we escape those coping, that little zone that we're in our comfort zone. They're not going to have these experiences. But what might you gain? What if you did it, even if you failed? What would you gain? And really thinking about these questions. So I'm just going to pop through the rest of our course. And this one was really huge too, which was just a 4-step problem solving process, because there's a lot of problems that come up. And it can be, I use this one as an example. My mom won't let me go to the lake. My friends are all going. Why? What are the things I could do? So we asked them to work through a bunch of different problems and come up with the best solutions. And I feel like they nailed the understanding of this one. But everything that comes across you every day is like, okay, that's a problem. Apply these 4 steps and you'll know exactly what to do without being irrational about it. So it puts them rational into their mind. We also talked about how to cope with all these stressful situations, and we worked through them in our class, and they're pretty big, and they love this part too. Again, I don't want to take too much time, but I want to talk about what we learned as the teachers of this class. So Melanie, Stephanie, and I want to also say, like, these are kind of my opinions. I really examine things very closely. I kind of shake them down, analyze. And so this is really me. It's not necessarily an opinion of NAMI Eastside or Melanie or Stephanie either, but I think the kids were actually starving for this. Like they were there way ahead of time. We thought people are going to, they're going to show up late. They're not committed. Oh no, they were like there at 9:30. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have the table set up yet. And they loved it so much. They didn't stop telling us how much they loved it, but they need more. They need more. And that's where we're going to adapt this program to make sure that we cover everything that they really need and keep going. We learned that we have the most amazing group of kids. They are so smart and they can save the world. We just need to have the confidence that that is where it's at. We also gave them a $100 gift certificate to Amazon for committing and attending all of the classes. At the end, we learned they don't need that. They didn't need that. They're like, no, they love their certificate, but they're like, you don't have to incentivize us. We're like, oh, good to know. This can be a lot cheaper to put on. And we all, as a society, we need to value those social connections a lot higher than we currently do. And this was my own thing that came out. It's called anthrophobia. If you guys don't know what anthrophobia is, there's so much fear of people right now. I had it. If anybody else had it, feel free to raise your hand, but we've become afraid of our own species. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. But the other aha I had, so we created a safe place where we asked everybody to test for COVID before we came in so they could feel really safe there and they didn't have to wear their mask. So why did 85% of them still wear their mask? It was super safe. Nobody had COVID, we all knew that. Why does 85% still wear their mask? And so again, my opinion, but the masks really served as their invisibility cloak. They're like security blankets. It's like, you can't see me if I have my mask on. They've been stuck in this 1D world on Zoom. They can turn off their camera, they can mute, and they're still doing it in person. And they're in 1D. We need to somehow get them into the 2D, 3D, 4D world that we've all used to live in. And again, believe me, I understand this. Like I lived there. But when we come to the expressionless society, and it's like, well, why are they all mind reading? Like, why are we all mind reading? Because expressions are how we read people's emotions. And if you can't see expression, you can't read emotions, and your only choice is to mind read, and it automatically goes negative. So think about that for a little bit, but honestly, the social development that is lost from that, my fear is that this whole thing continues where they're like, this keeps me safe. And it's like, well, it doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you safe from like spray germs, but what about your social development? So I just want you to think about that for a moment. And then about the fear of people. Whoa, the fear in the room was, we asked them because a lot of them were not willing to speak in public because they're afraid of being judged. We asked them just to rate their fears, and on your hand, hold it up. Like being judged by people. Whoa, that was huge. Why? Like, why do we care so much about people judging us? Why are we so afraid of new experiences? Why are we afraid of talking to people and connecting? Because this is the one thing that's going to interfere with the most basic human need. We need people. And I'm going to send also in our notes this podcast that like changed my world and helped me completely overcome this in just a matter of days. But as adults, like we've lived that life, we have the skills, we're just rusty. Our youth they're just developing their people skills, their social skills. We have to do something drastic to reteach this. And it's got to take a lot of intention, a lot of effort, pushing them outside of that little comfort zone and making them face these fears and working through it. So, okay. I'm passionate, can you tell? All right. So I have some things here that I really want to talk about for those parents and educators who's ever watching this, who can apply this to kids, but we also need tools. And I do want to let you know, like this coping skill program, we have it for like grade schoolers, for young adults, for adults. I mean, we all need them. If I didn't learn them, besides going through this course, I'll take the hit for you. We all need these. But the failure, I gotta tell you, our kids are so afraid of failing right now. We talked a lot about test grades. That was like their thing that we used a lot as examples. So embracing failure for them like this, and this just happened to me personally with a straight A student who came home with a D, and it was a choice, and I was like, oh my God, congratulations. I'm so glad you had this experience. Tell me what you learned. What are you going to do differently? How defining for you, right? Like, I was really happy actually about that, because I'm like, I never thought you'd get one, and I'm so glad you get to experience, and now you can relate. So tell me what you learned. And we talked about that, and it was like, I'm not in trouble. I'm like, no, you're not in trouble. I just know you can do better. You know you can. So let's embrace these little failures and move forward. Just like, what did you learn? If you don't learn, it's not worth it. If you learn, it's worth it. And the question of, you know, a lot of us are like, my kid's this or that, he does this or that. We're like, drive, drive, drive. But do you really know him? And are we leading by example? Are we a good example? And I want to talk to you about conversations. It's one of my final pieces here. And this I learned from being a mother, and you're welcome. I started this and sometimes I regretted it, but creating a safe place to have conversations, because who here has been a young person themselves? Just raise your hand. Do you tell your parents everything? And why not? I mean, I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, if my mom had any idea that I wasn't watching movies at a friend's house in 1987, she didn't know that. So I created a safe space for ourselves, and ours, like in middle school, was a car ride. And so we set our ground rules, which is, okay, this is our safe place. You can say anything you want. You can tell me anything you want. I will not hold it against you. There are no consequences. We have to be honest. We have to be vulnerable, and no consequences. We don't take it out of this car. But that meant, like, I can ask my son questions, but he can also ask me questions. Again, there was times I regretted, but I was totally honest. But it helped develop this thing. And if you're talking to your kids when you're like, I'm going to sit down and have a family meeting, oh, you're going to get some defensive non-answers from that. Because I tried that too. And my son's like, don't try. I know you're trying your psychology on me. I'm like, oh, I am. So they feel interrogated. And we have to practice this, because if you're having a conversation and you're talking about drugs or sex or something, and they give you their honest answer, and you're like, oh my God, that's judgment. It comes through in your face. You got to practice this with a friend until you're ready to do this with your kid. But you got to be judgment free both ways, in agreement. Like, if I'm going to tell you my stories, you can't judge me, and I won't judge you. No consequences. Keep it in the car. But I swear it's been the best thing, because now I know so much that if I didn't know, and I guess you have to ask yourself, do you really want to know? Because I want to know. So it really pays to be vulnerable, honest, and it's helped our relationship. And I just encourage you to, like, definitely practice it with a friend. Don't try it like without doing that, because your face will say 1,000 words. Just some points to communicate effectively. Eye contact. Eye contact is another thing we really got to work on here with our kids. They're not good at that. They're used to staring at screens. They got used to that. So the difference is that if you're looking at them directly when you're trying to have an intense conversation, to say, like, you know, having something intense, such as, have you ever felt so hopeless that you didn't care if you lived or died? You know, that's one for your walk or your drive. Those are just some questions. And do you feel that way now? Those are questions, but when you do that, like eye contact for kids, they freak out. So certain times you don't want to do that, but for adults, active listening, and and you sounds accusational. So those are just a few things that we worked through. And I just want to pop in here, like, when we say setting the example, I, and again, I do it to myself too. And I'm like, oh, I'm so fat, or, something. And our kids are just listening and watching how we talk to ourselves. And we are so mean to ourselves. We gotta stop that. You gotta be like, I rock. Look, I'm alive. I got 2 legs, I got 2 arms. Awesome. Whatever it takes, but they watch everything we do. And we gotta keep that into consideration. How are we doing on our connection? If you're also in that zone that I was in of being afraid of people, we gotta get out of that ourselves and know, like, there's no perfect parent. You gotta be vulnerable, and they appreciate that so much. They want that. And focusing on, again, who they want to be, not what they want to be. Key. So real quick, what's next? We've been taking all the feedback. We got tons of feedback from our class. We did a pre-survey, we did a post-survey, we did daily surveys. We're adding things in, we're adapting it because of that. And we have other things. We're doing a teen mental health first aid pilot that'll be coming up in September because they really want to help their peers. They're talking to each other. And we're going to train our teens. We're going to get them so intensely trained that they're going to be able to do this themselves. Because, one person or 5 people isn't going to be able to do it. But if we can teach 15 kids who can go out and teach 15 kids who can teach 15 kids, I'm sure you've seen the commercial, that's when we have things happening. And we want to know what's happening now. We pay attention to these surveys that were like, so 2020, but like, it's now. Let's pay attention to that. We're going to do some intensive skill building within our youth ambassadors, which Allison, I'll work on you on how we're going to do that and how to combine. And we have a wait list for the next Code to Thrive class. So again, I'll send this out afterwards. Again, big thank you to my board for letting me do this with no funding, but we could really use some sponsors for these things. If you know any corporations, companies, individuals who want to sponsor this, bring them. Looking for grants and donations. We need to spread the word to all the schools. My dream is that all the schools are on the same page. And if you want to volunteer to get involved, I have so much for you to do. And we need more youth ambassadors, and again, combining with other organizations who are doing the same type of work. And so we're not recreating the wheel. We'll just share the work. Oh, I can't leave without inviting you to our annual gala where we're going to talk about this. We have some of our ambassadors who were part of the program who are amazing, talking about what happened and what we're going to do in the future. So please come to that. You can really grab that code, but I'll send that out too. I'm just going to hurry up here and then we can have some conversations. But we have what NAMI Eastside does. We have free services, so support groups for families and for peers, classes, presentations, individuals living with a mental health condition. And all of our facilitators are volunteers who bring their lived experience into the space. So we don't do counseling, we don't do therapy. Find out more on our websites. And again, be part of the change. We can partner. We can't do this alone. I don't want to do it alone. And we need your help. So please talk to me. We got some good resources. Something I gave the kids for their left. I'm like, if you need anything, if you have any questions, first of all, you can text me. You can email me. Your parents can email me. But we have a crisis line, 988 now. And NAMI has a help text line, and kids are much more willing to text than anything. So making sure that's saved in all of our phones. I want to balance in mind, and thank you, Allison, for being here tonight. Very, very focused with the Lake Washington School District, and anybody's welcome, but it's parent education and support. I've got a whole flyer I'm going to send out about that. As we talk about getting mental health services, we're always talking about therapists, but we don't want to overlook coaches, because if there's cultural reasons why a lot of families won't go take their kid to a therapist, they will take them to coaches, and their kids are proud, like, I've got my own coach. So we have coaches in all different realms, and I'm going to send you all that contact information too. And also thank you to Youth Eastside Services for the work they do. They do therapy. So that's a great place to start for kids who need some additional help. Almost done. I'm just a few minutes over, but we've been doing a lot. I think if we could unhinge our hurdles, we could probably double this year, because that's what kind of help we need to have into our world. But we're doing a lot, and our NAMI in the schools is very, very active. We have a simple program called Ending the Silence that any school can get. So talk to your schools and you can get it into any classroom very, very easily. These Cope to Thrive and the teen mental health first aid, it's a little more difficult. We're working through that, but we have a lot of programs right now for our youth. So keep that in mind. If you have a school that wants some help, we are there for you. So here's our website. And again, we will definitely be sending out all of these resources to you. And I'm going to open it up for questions. And just know our upcoming forums, we do them every single month. We're going to have discussions about social media and youth. We have a Hiding in Plain Sight documentary about teen mental health from Ken Burns. We have a lot we're going to be talking about over the next rest of the year. So please keep putting these on your calendar, third Tuesday of the month. And we can't wait to truly support you. And now, let's open it up to some discussion. And we can stop the recording if we want. So then if we want like real talk, we can stop the recording. So who had the record button? Go on. Is that Donna?
No,